Alright, hi, welcome back. So this is going to be part 2 of our space badge. So in the first part we looked at some of the things we can see in the night sky and a couple of space missions. In this one we're going to take a closer look at our solar system and the planets. So what is a solar system? A solar system is a star and everything that orbits it. So a star is the same as our sun, we said in the last video, which is a big ball of gas in space, and they are really, really big. So all of the stars in the sky are basically just suns that are really far away. Now, because of gravity, things go around them. So if this is our model of our sun, and here's our model of planet Earth, Earth goes around the sun, and this is called orbiting, going around it. And the amount of time it takes Earth or any planet to go around its star is called 1 year. So that's how we decide how long a year is. It's the amount of time it takes a planet to go all the way around the star back to the same place. And a day is how long it takes for the planet to turn around. So if we pretend, let's put our flag on. This is going to be Southampton here in England, and this is England on our planet Earth. And while it's going around, the planet is also turning around and spinning like this. And the amount of time the planet takes to spin around once and go back to the same place is 1 day. This is why we have day and night, because if the sun is shining light only on the part that's facing the sun, as it turns, it gets dark and there's no light, and then it turns back around and light starts shining on it again. This is why it looks like the sun's coming up and going down, but actually it's planet Earth turning as it goes around the sun. So 1 year is the amount of time to go around a planet, and 1 day is the amount of time for a planet to turn around. So all the planets do this, and all the planets have different lengths of years and days. And our solar system is everything that orbits our sun, so everything that goes around our sun. And we have 8 planets that orbit our sun, and we also have 2 asteroid belts and a few other things like some comets. So here is a picture of our solar system, and you can see each of the planets that go around, but they're all different distances away, so they won't bump into each other. So we're going to go through each of the planets in our solar system. So the first one is Mercury. Mercury is the planet that is closest to our sun, and it's also the smallest planet in our solar system. It's a very rocky planet, kind of like Earth. It's made up of lots of rocks, but it's very wrinkly as well, where it was hot and then it shrunk and it all bunched up. So Mercury is a really wrinkly, rocky planet. And it is actually possible to see it in the night sky. It kind of looks like a star, not because it's the same size as a star, but just because it's a lot closer. And it's quite bright, but you're only really able to see it at sunrise and sunset because of where it is in the sky. Now, it takes Mercury only 88 days to go around the sun, so 1 year on Mercury is only 88 days long. 1 year on Earth is 365, so that's a lot longer for us to do it. They have very short years. But it takes a really long time for Mercury to turn around once and do 1 day. So a day is as long as having 178 days on Earth. So this means that a year is quicker than a day on Mercury, which is really weird. The second planet in our solar system is Venus. And Venus is also smaller than Earth, but it's bigger than Mercury. Venus is the brightest, one of the brightest things you can see in the night sky. It's not quite as bright as the moon, but it is really, really bright. And you can see that at night as well if you know where to look for it. So maybe next time you're out at night, you might be able to spot it. So Venus is so bright because it's a really hot planet. The temperature on Venus is 462 degrees, which is really, really hot. The temperature on Earth is somewhere between 18 to 25 degrees, whereas that's so much more on Venus. And water starts to boil, it gets so hot it boils at 100 degrees. And the temperature on Venus is 462, so that's crazy hot. And it's this hot because there are a lot of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere trapping all the heat from the sun getting hotter. So we have some greenhouse gases on Earth and that part of our atmosphere, and they help to warm us up. but we don't have anywhere near as much as Venus, which is why they are so much hotter than us. Now, the day on Venus is 243 Earth days long. So the amount of time it takes it to turn around is 248 Earth days. That is a really long day. And another fun thing about it is Venus is covered in lots and lots of clouds, which means that it's actually really hard to see the surface of it without mapping it out with special sonar technology. But they think because of all these greenhouse gases in the clouds, there used to be water on Venus, but it's all evaporated away now, which is really interesting and exciting because not many planets have got water on them, and water is a really important thing for a planet to have things like maybe life, but there's definitely no life on Venus because it's so hot. The third planet in our solar system is one that we all know. That is planet Earth. And we're not going to talk about Earth much because we already know a lot about Earth. It's where we're from. The fourth planet is Mars, which is a very famous one. Everyone knows Mars. And Mars is actually a little bit smaller than planet Earth, but it's still bigger than the other two. It's also a very red planet. Sometimes people call it the red planet. And the reason that Mars is so red is because there's a lot of iron on its surface, and all the iron has rusted and turned a sort of reddish colour. So you know what rust looks like if you leave some metal out for a long time and it gets all rusty. Well, that's what's happened on the surface of Mars, which is why it's so red. Another fun thing about Mars is it has the biggest mountain that we have ever seen. And this mountain is called Olympus Mons, and it is 22 kilometers tall, which is huge. So Mount Everest, the biggest mountain on planet Earth, is only 8 kilometers tall. So Olympus Mons is more than 3 times bigger than the biggest mountain that we've got. That is a very big mountain. It's also a lot colder on Mars than Earth, so it's a very cold planet. But it has ice caps. So we've got the North Pole and the South Pole, and they're covered in ice, and we call these ice caps. Well, Mars also has these. Mars has got ice at the top and bottom of the planet, which is very interesting. And it's also got 2 moons. So the 2 moons on Mars are called Phobos and Deimos, and they are a bit smaller than Earth's moons, and they go round, which is very interesting. Right, planet number 5 in our solar system is Jupiter, and you'll notice straight away Jupiter is a lot bigger than the first 4 planets we looked at, because our first 4 planets, these are very rocky planets, very solid. Well, Jupiter is something called a gas giant, which means most of it is made up of gas. It's not solid. You couldn't stand on it. You would just fall through. Now, a lot of gas giants do tend to have rocky cores in the middle where they've pulled in rocks, and the heaviest bits go to the middle, but most of them is made up of gas, which is why they are so big. So it's the biggest planet in our solar system, and it's got several interesting qualities. It's got one thing here, you'll notice, this big red dot, kind of looks like an eye. Well, that's a massive storm that's taking place. And that is bigger, I think, than our moon. The storm is so big, and it's been taking place for hundreds of years. Now, Jupiter also has a lot of moons. We've only got 1 moon. Mars has got 2 moons. Jupiter has got 79 moons. That is a lot of moons. And these moons are also very, very interesting. So one of the most interesting ones is one called Io. And Io is covered in lots and lots of volcanoes. It's one of the most volcanically active places in our solar system, which is very cool. And they also have one called Europa. And Europa is very exciting because it's covered in water and ice. So it's got a really warm core with maybe some volcanoes at the bottom, and then it's got a big oceans, and then it's got a thick layer of ice on top. And scientists are very excited by this, and so are astronauts, because that might be the sort of thing that you need to have life. So there are some places on Earth, like underwater volcanoes, where there are little microbial lives living there, and it's possible that little microbial lives might also be living on Europa in these oceans underneath the ice. But we don't know that, we haven't checked, and we can't prove it yet until we go and look at it. But that's still very exciting. Um, One last fun fact about Jupiter is that it rains diamonds on Jupiter. So, pretty cool. Raining diamonds, although I wouldn't want to be stood out in that because I think it would be quite painful. Our next planet, planet number 6, is Saturn. Saturn is another gas giant. It's massive as well, but not quite as big as Jupiter. But something that Saturn's got is some big rings around it. And even though these rings are really, really, really wide, they're only quite thin, which is very interesting. And Saturn is 9 times wider than Earth. So you could fit 9 Earths in a row to be as big as Saturn, which is massive. And Saturn's also got a lot of moons. It's got more than 60 different moons. But it's not very heavy because it is a gas giant and it's made up of gas. So if you put Saturn in a bathtub, then it would float, but you'd have to find a really, really big bathtub. So we couldn't actually do that. So because it's made of gas, it's very, very light. And its rings around the outside are made up mostly of small rocks and bits of ice and things like that, some dust, which is what makes them look how they look. It also, one of its moons, Phobie, has its own set of rings as well, which is interesting. Not just Saturn doesn't just have rings, but one of Saturn's moons has rings as well. So a day on Saturn is only 10 hours long. It only takes Saturn 10 hours to turn around once, which is massive, but it takes it 29 years to orbit the sun once, so to go all the way around the sun. So that's a long time. It's also the last planet that it was possible to be seen from Earth without help. So in ancient times, you might notice all of these different planets have got names, and these names all have something in common. They all are named after Roman gods. So the Romans looked up at the night sky and they thought that the bright things they could see were their gods. So they named them after their gods, which is why they've got names like Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. These are the names of Roman gods. Now, these are the only ones they could see, the first ones. The rest of the planets in our solar system were too far away for them to be able to see, but we can see them now because we've got special telescopes that help us. So the next planet is Uranus, and Uranus was not able to be seen by ancient civilizations, but we decided to name it after another Roman god because we wanted to keep up the pattern. So it was only discovered in 1781, which is about 240 years ago. That was how quite recent compared to knowing about the rest of these planets for thousands and thousands of years. And it's a very pale blue colour, and the reason it's this pale blue is because most of the planet, because it's a gas giant, also made up of gas, is made up of water and ammonia and methane ice crystals. So that's why it's such a pale blue colour. And Uranus it also got rings, not rings as big and as visible as Saturn's, but it does have its own set of rings, about 13 very narrow ones. And they think that these rings are made from a moon that was orbiting Uranus, but it got smashed up when it was hit by something big and broke up into little rocks, which now make up the rings around it. And Uranus is the coldest planet in our solar system. It's really cold. Alright, the last planet in our solar system is Neptune, and this one we also couldn't see from the night sky without telescopes, but we named it after another god once we found it. And this was only discovered in 1846, so about 170 years ago, so not very long at all. And you can't see it in the night sky without a telescope, which is why we hadn't found it before then. This planet takes about 164 years to go all the way around the sun once. So 1 year is 164 of Earth's years, which is a massive long time. And it has 13 rings as well, although they're very small and hard to see. No, it doesn't. It has 13 moons. It only has 3 rings, but it does have a few rings. And it looks like it's blue because it's made up of water, but it's not made of water because it's a gas giant. It's mostly made up of helium and hydrogen. It's just a dark blue colour. So those are the 8 planets in our solar system, but we also have an honorary mention for our last one, which is Pluto. So Pluto, we first thought it was a planet, but a couple of years ago, we found out that actually Pluto is not a planet, doesn't meet the requirements. So there's a couple of specific things something has to do to be a planet, and Pluto didn't do all of those things because it hadn't cleared out all the things in its neighborhood, is what they've said, which is a very confusing scientific term. But basically, there are lots of other things bigger than Pluto in the area, so it can't be considered a planet. So they've changed it to a dwarf planet, which is something that's almost but not quite a planet. Now, Pluto is really, really small. Pluto is actually smaller than Earth's moon. That's how small it is. But even though it's so small, it has 5 of its own tiny moons as well. And it's also got a big flat area on it that kind of looks like a love heart, which is interesting. So those are each of the planets in our solar system and a couple of the moons, and also Pluto as a bonus. And your challenge for part 2 to get this badge is you need to make a model of one of the planets in our solar system. So you can pick any one you want, and you could maybe make a big paper mache model and paint it, or you might want to draw a picture of it, or maybe you might have a different idea in mind, but you have to make a model of one of the planets in our solar system. So I look forward to seeing your models and which planet you choose. You can pick your favourite one, and good luck, guys.